I was about 10 when this happened, and my brother and I were taking swimming lessons at a public pool about 10 minutes away from our house. We would go for our lesson every Friday evening, and usually afterwards we would just chill in the pool until Dad was ready. On this particular Friday evening, my brother and I were in the spa pool doing kid stuff and whatnot, when I suddenly noticed a man sitting directly across from me in the spa, simply staring at me. The spa was about 12 meters in length. The man was tall and thin. He had a very pointy nose and button-like eyes. He had very short, thin, gray hair, and his skin was unusually red. I didn't think much of this at the time, as I had seen this man around the pool before, and I think my dad may have even had a conversation with him at some point. The man continued to stare, and it made me so uncomfortable that I had to get out of the spa and sit outside, waiting for my dad. I started seeing him everywhere. Wherever I was, he was. Grocery stores, malls, outside of my school, and always at my Friday night swimming lessons. I never told my dad about seeing him. I thought maybe I was overreacting, and I was very naive to the obvious danger. I remember one instance where I was at a department store with my mom, and I saw him down the end of every aisle we went down and said nothing. Red flags started to go off when he decided to carry a camera around with him. He would always be in a completely black outfit with his camera bag around his neck, just watching me. One day, I was at the mall with a few friends when one of them pointed him out before I had even noticed him. I told them about the man and the way he looked at me, and my friend's older sister advised me to tell security so that he would be removed. As soon as he saw them coming, he got up and left. Flash forward about 2 years or so, and I hadn't seen my stalker friend for so long that he was becoming a distant memory, until I got called into the school office because my uncle was there to collect me early. As soon as I saw him there, arms open, in my school office waiting for me, I felt sick. I had forgotten about this man, and 2 years later, he had the nerve to come and try to get me out of school, and he had his camera. I marched right past him and to the office secretary and simply said, "This man is not my uncle," and walked straight back to class. At lunches, he was often outside my school. He would wave to try to get me to come over, or he would hold up a chocolate bar as some kind of child bait. So his random school appearances continued to the point the school needed to contact my parents and let them know of the situation. My dad was especially distraught, having actually spoken to this man before, and demanded that the police be contacted so we could get a restraining order. That was when we found out. The man was a convicted sex offender. The police took his camera and found hundreds and hundreds of photos of me, some of which were zoomed up into my bedroom windows at my own house. We quickly got a restraining order, and thankfully, I haven't seen him since. I managed an art supply shop for a while, and while there, got to know one of my customers very well. He was a large man in every sense of the word. He towered over the rest of the customers, had wide shoulders, and while he wasn't in shape at all, he still had hands like bowling balls. Gregory worked as a city bus driver, but was planning to start a company in some South American country and was coming to learn more about some crafts so that he could take supplies and know what to do with them. For this, Gregory would often come to classes. Usually, he would be alone. Sometimes he would bring his wife, a gorgeous woman, also from South America. I thought they were a nice couple, friendly, and thought nothing more of it. That all changed when one day, Gregory came into the store. My employee, on duty, was busy behind the counter, and Gregory asked for my help looking at books. Our book section was in the back corner, the only section of the store, I might add, not visible from the front desk. I walked back and turned to ask him what he was looking for, and he suddenly pinned me against the wall. Again, this was a big man. He professed his love for me and told me that he would leave his wife for me if I said so, and that he would, that night, fly us both to South America to save me from being here. I blustered off the whole thing and somehow got away. Gregory quickly left the store. A few days later, I was working at the front desk, which was near the window, and heard some commotion outside. A city bus was sitting there. Now, we were on the bus route, but there was no reason for a bus to stop outside. Puzzled, I glanced at the driver. It was Gregory. He saw me looking and quickly drove off. Over the next few days, I would see the same bus slow down outside. Looking up the bus route, he was actually taking it a few blocks outside his run to do this, bringing his unwilling passengers along for the ride. The next week, I was training a new employee. We were solo in the store when in walked Gregory, looking like hell. I saw him, and not thinking, quickly ran out the back door, leaving a brand new employee there, confused and solo. I walked down to a thrift shop nearby and asked to hide in their back room for 15 minutes. I then proceeded to call the shop. My employee, sounding lost and panicked, said Gregory had left. When I got back, he left a message for me. He was fired from his job, and his wife had left him. This meant there was nothing holding us apart. Soon afterwards, Gregory took to just sitting outside the shop in his car, staring out the window at me. He'd be there sometimes at close, and I started making sure I was never going out to my car alone. One night, my staff had all left, and they looked out to see Gregory outside. Panicked, I asked a frequent customer to please stay, and that my stalker was outside. Said customer was in to buy tattoo supplies. He was a member of a bike gang, and was an overall sweet guy. I told him the whole story, and concerned, he walked me out to my car that night. He then told me that the next time Gregory was outside, to simply give him a call. That weekend, I looked out and saw Gregory staring at me from my car. I got on the cell phone quickly and called my biker friend. A half hour passed, until suddenly there was a roar of engines outside. Easily 20 motorcycles came pulling up, surrounding Gregory's car. Someone yanked open his door, and I saw heated words. Gregory was talking in an animated fashion with his hands. No one looked happy. A second later, he tried to back up, and everyone was back on their motorcycles, following him down the street. An hour later, my biker friend came in and said that I shouldn't expect any more trouble from Gregory ever again. It was October, and my family was at a campground in Vermont for a long weekend. My family is Native American, and it was the second year in a row that we'd gone to this particular powwow. A native gathering. This one was open for anybody to come, native or not. We brought a camper because it was cold that time of year, especially with the wind coming off the lake. Anyway, it was the first day of the powwow, and I walked from my campsite to the clearing, where the dancing and drumming would be in my regalia, my traditional Native American dress. When I got there, I saw my father talking to a man who was also in a regalia, but I didn't recognize him. The second he saw me approach, he started watching me in a way that weirded me out. I was instantly uncomfortable with the way he looked at me, but I was raised to see the best in people, so I ignored it. Within seconds of meeting me, he asked me to tie these leather bracelets around his wrists. I got the impression that he asked me to do it instead of my father so that I would have to touch him. I did it despite this awkward feeling. As the morning went on, I felt him watching me everywhere I went. At one point, he came up to me and said that he'd seen my picture from the year before and that he knew it was me for my dress and my hair. Note that I'm adopted by a Native American family, and I have red hair and snow-white skin, so I tend to make quite an impression at these gatherings based on how I look. He told me that he came because he saw the picture. This gave me a twisted feeling in my gut. He saw my picture the year before and came this year to see if I was here again? I was pretty innocent and naive back then, but this just screamed bad news to me. I started avoiding him as best as I could, but he quickly went from watching me to following me over the next 2 days. It got to the point where I wouldn't even walk back to my camper alone because he'd followed me there once already. Everywhere I turned, there he was. Following me turned into making me dance with him. There was a lot of dancing at these gatherings, and it was disrespectful to refuse, especially to your elder, so I complied. At the end of the day, I started to leave to go back to my campsite, and he stepped in front of me, grabbed my face, and pressed his forehead and nose to mine, like an intimate moment between a couple in love. Picture a Nicholas Spark movie poster, only against my will. I felt so disgusted being touched by him, and held like that I missed the first part of what he had said to me. I was too busy thinking about grabbing my decorative knife from my waist and stabbing him in one of those creepy eyes that told me exactly what he wanted. And if his eyes didn't already spell out the fact that he wanted me in a way that no middle-aged man should ever want a 14-year-old, he practically told me. He said, "I'll be missing you tonight," and then he let me go. I almost threw up right then and there from panic. Honestly, I don't remember why I didn't tell my parents that I thought he was going to try to rape me, because I did in fact think that. I was certain of it. But with my family, I thought I would be safe. They knew something was up though, because that night, they asked if the man had tried to hurt me. I said no, because it was, after all, true. That night, I couldn't go to sleep. Terror and panic kept me awake. That, and feeling that I was being watched. I felt like I knew the man was right outside my camper. It was my intuition that kept me awake. I just knew that if I closed my eyes, something bad would happen. I kept thinking I heard sounds at the window and by the door. I told myself it was my fear making me imagine things. Suddenly, I heard the jiggle of the lock being picked. I knew this was real. This was not in my head. The soft pop of the lock giving away and the small breeze from outside told me that this was actually happening. My panic choked me up so much that what would have been a blood-curdling scream for my mom was a strangled cry. I told her that he was here, that he had popped the lock. She tried to ignore me in favor of sleep and said it was a dream, but my terror alarmed her and she quickly went to the door. Sure enough, the door was open, swinging in the breeze. The man, long gone, because of my immediate scream for help. My mother told my father what had happened, and we re-locked the door, but I don't think anyone slept that night. The next morning, no one talked about it, and the man was nowhere to be seen. No police was ever called, which was shocking to me because my dad was an ex-army guy and a current cop. If anyone would have followed up on this guy, it was him. I've always wondered if he and my older brother had taken matters into their own hands. Everyone knew about it, but nothing was ever said. Ever. It's been 7 years, and it's never been brought up. I always wonder what would have happened if I hadn't had a gut feeling that kept me awake. We were all heavy sleepers, and I never would have heard the lock being picked. I always wonder what his plan was after getting in the camper. He couldn't get to just me without having to deal with my family. My boyfriend thinks that the only thing a guy that determined could have done at this point was kill us in our sleep. A dark part of me hopes that my dad and my brother did in fact do something about it, and that the sick man is at the bottom of that lake. But they are good people and would probably never do that. He's caused me years of lasting trauma and terror that I can't escape. To this day, I obsessively check locks before going to bed. I avoid looking out the peephole, terrified of what I'll see on the other side of the door, waiting for me. I've gone so far as to check the closets when I'm in my apartment alone. I don't know what I expect to find, but I always have to check for him anyway. It's been 7 years, and because I never knew what happened to him after all that night, I still fear him. He waited a whole year to find me at that powwow, obsessively stalked me for 2 days, and then suddenly disappeared? I just don't think so. My older brother, which I will call John for private purposes, worked night shifts in a gas station. He wasn't exactly a person who could intimidate others. He was kind of short, but he was also muscly. One day, at work, his boss had told him that he had invested in an alarm system and a taser. He didn't tell him where he had hid the taser, and my brother, being stupid, didn't ask him where he had hid it. There was a button which was in the corner of the countertop, or whatever it's called, but it's not visible for customers to see it. He thought that was the alarm, and then he just carried on with his work. He looked at the clock behind him. It was almost 11 at night, and he worked until 4 in the morning. I'm not sure if that's how usually people work, night shifts, but that's what he told me once. A few customers came, and they bought some things, and paid for the gas that they had bought. After about 2 hours, sometime around 1 at night, a weird man came in and started walking fast around all the aisles. He seemed weird and confused, but John didn't question that out loud, and the man suddenly stopped and stared at John. The weird man started scratching his thigh and then moved closer to his crotch. Then, for some odd reason, he punched his crotch. John reckoned it was painful and made a weird face himself. Then he started walking slowly up to the counter and said, "Hey, missy," although my brother is a boy. John then said, "Sir, I'm not a girl. Anything I can do for you?" Then the man kept walking closer, closer, and closer. As my brother was about to say, "Do you need help?" the man slowly and creepily started saying, "I'm just not into girls. I'm just not into girls." My brother was creeped out. He then said, "Sir, please stay back." My brother was scared, but he also thought it could be a prank, so he just ignored him. When another customer came in, she was female, and bought a chocolate bar. While she was giving my brother the money, John realized the man put his hand in his crotch and started pushing his hand back and forth. John realized what he was doing and shouted, "Hey, sir, get your hands out." The customer jumped because she got scared and just walked out of the station real fast. The man then started approaching John, and John pressed the alarm. He didn't hear anything and then thought that it didn't work. He knew he was in danger, and the man started licking his lips and jumped over the counter. As soon as he landed, he punched him in the face as hard as he possibly could. He ran out of the store without informing his boss. The man was out cold. This part is what he saw on the camera the next day. A man walked in and saw the man on the floor. He called the ambulance, and they came and took the man away. Then, after about an hour, his boss came back from the gym, where he was while all of this happened. When he realized John wasn't there, and John came back to the station and watched the camera footage after he left, he turned off the monitor, and then the boss saw him. Before he could explain what happened, he was fired. My brother was kind of angry, but not that angry. The same day he told us about the incident, the police were not informed, as my brother was still freaked out by the man. A week later, I was home alone and got a knock on my door. It was an old man. He had ripped up clothes and his hair was greasy. I opened the door, and the man tried to push through the door with no words. But me being sort of strong, I shut the door and locked it. He tried smashing through the door, but I called the police and hid in a locked room with a kitchen knife. The man broke the door and started walking up the stairs. He was close to the room I was in, and then I heard another person come through the door and up my stairs. I heard him shout something, which I wasn't sure what it was, but I realized it was my brother. The police said, "Stay put and be quiet. We're on our way." My brother John, I guess, had a fight with the man, and he almost killed him. I then finally heard the police sirens, and I knew it was all finally over. This is perhaps one of the scariest things I have ever heard, but this could just be because of my really close friendship with this girl. One of my best friends, Emily, was 4 at the time this happened. Emily didn't have the greatest parents. They really didn't care about her at all. So like I said, Emily was 4 years old at the time, and her parents decided it was an okay idea to leave their 4-year-old daughter at home alone for the weekend while they had a romantic getaway. Emily said she was watching TV when she heard a knock at the front door. Being 4, she opened the door without asking who it was. Standing there was a bald bearded man in a hoodie that was covered in blood. She said she stood there for what felt like an eternity, eyes locked with the stranger. The next thing she remembers is that he grabbed her by the neck, brought her over to his car, and threw her into the trunk. She said she was crying for a while, but eventually stopped. She was sitting in the dark trunk when she heard an extremely loud crash, and the car jerked her against the metal part of the trunk. At this, she began crying again, and next thing she knew, the trunk she was in was opened, and she was pulled out carefully by a trucker. The car had been hit by an 18-wheeler, hitting the car in the perfect spot to kill her kidnapper and leave her with only a cut on her head. To this day, she still has that scar. This is where it gets really scary. When the police checked the kidnapper's house, they found the bodies of the 3 dead kids with their heads chopped off. They found the heads in his bedroom, each one filled with a certain bodily fluid. Emily came to live with me and my parents for a few weeks because her parents were unfit to raise a child. The trucker that saved her life eventually adopted her. He was the greatest father she could have ever asked for. Hey guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I just want to take the time to thank you guys for helping me reach 10,000 subscribers. It's really quite amazing, and to celebrate that milestone, I want to do a question and answer session. So if you guys have any questions from anything under the sun, feel free to leave it down in the comments or on my Twitter. Please like this video or comment, share, and subscribe if you're new. Also follow my Twitter to get updates. If you guys want to check out a great channel on Twitch that live streams games like DayZ, Battlefield, and more, I recommend watching Handkerchief. So check out his channel by clicking on the link in the description. Also, let me know what you guys want to see in the upcoming videos by commenting down below, and if you have any stories to submit, send them to wormystories@gmail.com. I've been working on a gas station stories lately. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find many original stories, and I don't want to put out a video of stories that people have already heard. So, for any of you looking forward to gas station stories, that might not come in a while until I get some more original stories. But anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video, and don't forget to subscribe to join the wormhole. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.